What's up guys, it's Creeves, Paladins Guides here, and today we are going to be covering Drogoz, the fiery gold lusting lizard. We'll be covering his infamous salvo combos, ways to utilise his aerial movement, and much more. Being a blaster, Drogoz excels in dealing with grouped up enemies, with all his attacks doing blast damage. However, he is one of the most counterable champions. Let's get into it without further ado. By the way guys, just a quick side note before we do start, I am sorry this guide's a little bit late. I had, really busy with school and also some Steam problems getting the Steam guide out, but there are a load of champions on the list right now. You guys have been really crazy requesting them, and we're almost at 500 subscribers too, so thank you so much guys for all the support. Really does mean the world, and keep it up. Thank you so much. Okay, so first of all we have the ability overview, starting with his rocket launcher. Drogoz's primary fire packs a massive punch. Essentially it's an upgraded EV staff. The rockets deal 850 damage per shot every 0.85 seconds. Each successful hit will give 4% ultimate charge, meaning Drogoz has a quickly charging ultimate. This can allow for ultimates at first point fight to take out a pesky frontline such as Nanara or Makoa. As with all blast damage, having a height advantage over your target greatly aids your chances of winning the fight, so consciously contest high ground as much as possible. This will make hitting successful rockets much easier. An important tip for fighting other aerial enemies, such as Drogoz, one of your biggest counters, is to get as close as possible. This will make hitting your shots many times easier. Next we have Fire Spit. This is Drogoz's right mouse button with a relatively short cooldown of 8 seconds. An extremely unique mechanic, Fire Spit has a couple of uses and is incredibly powerful in the right hands. Here are some situations where Fire Spit excels. When fighting aerial targets, it's much easier to deal damage by fire spitting than going for direct hits. This makes dealing with your counters or an enemy Drogoz much easier. For finishing off enemies, you can easily use Fire Spit to finish targets that are running away or hiding around corners, waiting for a heal. Doing insane damage to group up enemies, the ability allows you to easily do thousands to those, grouped up on points, and it can even be reset really quickly with, I think it's called Masterful the card, if they have a lot of deployables, making it perfect for initiating team fights. Some people don't know this, but Fire Spit actually marks enemies directly hit by the spit. They will receive 30% additional damage from your attacks for 4 seconds. Ideally, you don't want to be doing this. You want to be shooting the Fire Spit for an 1000 damage burst, but this is a nice bonus for when enemies decide to annoyingly block your spit. There's always that person that likes to jump in front of it. Next up we have Salvo, with a rather long cooldown of 20 seconds. It's an insanely useful blast ability, allowing you to load all remaining ammo into the attack. Your next fire shooting all the preloaded rockets. These rockets deal 250 damage per shot with a very large explosion radius, which makes it easy to finish off people around corners, similarly to Fire Spit. Additionally, they deal 200% bonus damage to shields, by default. This makes taking out enemy front lines that much easier. The ability is also the key component to the infamous Salvo Fire Spit combo. It's extremely aggravating to play against and takes little skill to pull off successfully. Simply prime up a salvo and then fire a spit, shooting them in the general direction and of the enemies, and simply watch the slays come on. This combo can bring full health champions to death in a second or so, and is another great way to initiate a team fight or to simply flank around and get an easy kill. Next up we have Thrust and Booster, which is his F and a passive move of space. From the already described abilities, we can see Drogoz is a unique and versatile champion. His aerial mobility and booster resource system just makes this even better. It's a key component of the Dragon's kit. As mentioned in the rocket launcher section, Thrust allows you to gain a height advantage, making shots much easier to hit. It also makes landing the Fire Spit combo a million times easier. A nice tip to conserve booster for is to repetitively tap the spacebar rather than hold it. This will allow you to move slightly further. Furthermore, there are some areas on maps where you can camp in the top of rooms or move other areas, allowing you to sneak up on unsuspecting victims or avoid attacks and gain an extra edge in 1v1s. However, you need to be careful not to put yourself in very open air situations, as this makes you an easy picking. Try and stick around buildings or walls. Next up we have Dragon Punch. Of course, Drogoz' ultimate. This ultimate is incredibly crucial, and there are a number of tips that allow you to maximise your chances of success. Because I'm not going to lie to you guys, lots of the time this Drogoz ultimate can really just end up in you dying, maybe getting a kill, but sometimes it's not worth that trade-off, and you could have got that trade-off by using your normal attacks. So it's really something that you have to be careful with. The ultimate has a wind-up time of 2 seconds. This makes you very vulnerable if you are in the open, so always ult behind or in some cases above enemies where they won't be able to see you easily. During the ultimate, you are CC immune. It is the special type of CC immunity where you can't be polymorphed, similar to a Leviathan Koa ultimate. The ultimate has a duration of 4 seconds after the wind-up time. You need to be close enough to reach your enemy and avoid those awkward moments where your ultimate runs out right in the enemy front line's face. You can cancel Dragon Punch by repressing E, your ultimate or your ultimate key. I can't stress enough that if you do think you will fail or immediately die after you've hit a target, it's sometimes better to just cancel it and save 30% ultimate charge. Cancelling or failing to hit an enemy with Dragon Punch refunds the 30, as mentioned above. Normally, your key targets are enemy frontlines, or you could also go for some supports, but sometimes it's just whoever you can get quickly. A nice tip to remember is if someone is like below half, or even lower, sometimes it's again better to cancel it, unless they're a frontline like an ulting Makoa. Additionally, as I just mentioned, you were the biggest counter for Ancient Rage, which is Makoa's ultimate, of course. So as soon as you hear the challenge and you're in a safe place, hit that ultimate key. Oh, and one more thing, be very careful not to hit deployables. You can fight high above the battle to avoid the chance of punching a stray Ying illusion. And to add insult to injury, you won't be refunded a scrap of ultimate charge if you do hit an illusion. Let's move on to the talent section. With newfound balance changes to Fusillade, Drogoz can be seen as another champion where all talents are viable in different situations. Some more so than others, but let's get into it. First of all, we have Fusillade. Direct shots deal 25% more damage. With its recent nerf, Fusillade has fell much more in line with the other legendaries. It is still very viable in the majority of situations, if you are very accurate with your rockets. I would still very much recommend this card, especially on maps where you can reliably pre-fire rockets for guaranteed hits. For example, Serpent Beach. An interesting fact is salvo rockets also deal 25% more damage with a direct hit, making the Fire Spit salvo combo ever more prevalent. Next up we have Combustible. Fire Spit now applies knockback and deals an additional 30% of its damage to targets hit over 2 seconds. This will mean it does 1.3 gauge damage in a burn effect. Probably my favourite talent, Combustible offers an extremely powerful playstyle for Drogoz. The talent allows you to consecutively disrupt team fights without putting yourself in danger, knocking enemies around and disorientating their aim and vision, making it the perfect way to initiate fights or just help out a teammate. On top of this, enemies hit will follow a predictable flight path, making finishing rockets ever easier. Combustible also acts as a sort of reveal for the 2 seconds enemies burn for, allowing you to pre-fire corners and track enemies' positions. Using the loadout provided in the loadout section, Fire Spit's cooldown can be insta-reset depending on how many enemies you hit. This means the talent is a must-pick when going up against teams with deployables such as Ying, Inara or Barrack, and offers a powerful method of crowd control. Next up, we have Reign of Terror. Salvo now fire activates instantly, always fires 6 shots, and its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds. Recently buffed, Reign of Terror is now relatively viable. There are a couple of bugs with it, however. Similarly to Combustible, Reign of Terror excels against deployables, with a certain card loadout. If you hit more than 3 enemies, you can instantly reset the cooldown. This makes controlling chokes and small points incredibly simple and effective. However, they do need an open sightline above to make it super viable. Finally, we have Wormjet, arguably the worst card. Worm is, in my view, a bit underused, increasing flight speed of booster by 40%. Giving a constant speed boost, Worm is not only a ton of fun, but also makes navigating the map a million times easier. Generally, you're going to want to pick this talent when facing a multitude of slow projectile champions, like Eevee or maybe an enemy Drogoz. To be honest, I think the main disadvantage of Worm is that speed is countered by something that cannot really be judged by simple means: good aim. Apart from Leanna, of course. This overall makes Worm a more unreliable pick, and hence its rare use. It really just depends on the skill of the other players. Next up, we have the loadout section. I'll just be putting these on screen, but I have pretty much got a loadout for all of the, different legendary cards. My name on Paladins is Creeves if you'd like to import any, and the loadout names are fairly self-explanatory. I guess you can do that for all champions, but there will be images on screen too. The next section we're going to be covering is itemization. These are just going to be some general notes on what to purchase with credits. This section is to show you some good items to buy. Obviously these are subjective and can change depending on the situation, so if you have a personal favourite, go ahead and carry on buying it. In early game, as for any class, bar support of course, I would recommend investing into early Corsair Rise. However, Drogoz is also a viable wrecker, so if the enemy team has a number of shields and your teammates can't pick wrecker up, feel free to. Or late game, after the red item to level 2, at least level 3, I'd heavily recommend picking up Haven. Pretty much all your biggest counters are all hit scan or direct damage, so Haven will do a great job at giving you the extra edge into fights against them. Of course, make the judgment between the blue item yourself, since they are all pretty situational and dependent on the enemy team's draft. After a blue, I would recommend either Rejuvenate if you're in need of extra healing, especially with a Genos. Then you can stack into a yellow item. Nimble is a viable option and allows you to navigate the map much more frequently, but really any yellow item will do, as seen in the itemization figure. Next up, we have hints and tips. These are going to be some tips on how to use Drogoz, special circumstances, etc. There are quite a number of useful tips that you should always keep in mind when playing Drogoz. Being one of the most aerial champions in the game, there are flank routes that can't be achieved by ground-based champs. Most well known is the roof on Bright Marsh. Many a time have I glided across the hay roof to rain down a spit/Q combo. They never suspect a thing, and you could get easy triple kills from this. There are many more of these spots on different maps, for example on maps like Serpent Beach or of course Fish Market. Being arguably one of the most counterable champions in the game, as a Drogoz you need to learn how to deal with your enemies that openly have the advantage over you. You can do this by slowing down your playstyle a little bit and focusing on putting yourself in favourable situations and doing damage from further back. Sometimes just spamming rockets down a choke will do much more for the team than you running in to get a kill and die, just like mentioned in the ultimate section. In the open air, you are a sitting duck, literally anyone can kill you. There's also a certain amount of skill involved when playing against snipers. Try not to challenge popular sightlines and instead use your fire spit and salvo to create pressure when they can't land shots on you. Combustible excels in displacing and distracting snipers from doing any further damage to you or the rest of your team, not to mention it majorly messes up their aim. A large part of the skill needed to play Drogoz well is involved in reliably hitting fire spits from all sorts of angles. I'd recommend visiting the shooting range for a bit and practicing shooting some fire spits while falling, moving or ascending. Do this until you get a feel for the speed and slow drop of the projectile. I guarantee this will give you the extra edge in a number of matchups and will help you get the hang of more complicated and long range fire spits. Ranked. Now this section is quite a tricky one for Drogoz since there's a lot to think about, so let's go. As of now, Drogoz is a top pick / top pan. He's extremely strong, but in my eyes, takes the spotlight a little bit too much. He's very easily counterable, but has a relatively low skill requirement. A champion like VK, on the other hand, has a very high skill requirement, but is not really countered by anything to the level of Drogoz. Overall, Drogoz is a very map and draft based pick. On maps like Jaguar Falls and Brightmarsh, he's extremely solid. However, on Timbermill, he's merely a dead man walking. I'd recommend trying to wait till later in the draft to pick him up, and try and play some mind games with your opponents. Pick up a Strix and they're unlikely to get the Drogoz. Later on in the draft, pick the Drogoz yourself. That kind of thing. However, if snipers are banned, and your team can pick up Lian and Drogoz or Androxus, in my eyes that's a pretty solid pick. On the other hand, a good Drogoz can devastate the enemy even if they have counters to him. Lots of counters have high skill requirement, e.g. Andra and the snipers, which means you normally have a bit more breathing room. Just play carefully and abuse blast to avoid enemy sightlines, and try and, stick with the team to avoid getting flanked too often. Not to mention, he offers one of the biggest counters to Makoa, being able to counteract his insanely powerful ultimate. Overall, I would recommend banning Drogoz on his good maps. If he is open, don't just blindly pick him. Think carefully about the draft and how you can avoid being put into a bad, unfavourable situation. That's going to end off today's guide. Thank you again for all of you leaving lovely comments, feedback, all of that awesome stuff. It really does mean the world, and we have some really nice champions coming soon. I hope they're what you guys want. But yeah, I'm pretty busy with school, so might be a little bit slow. I know the schedule isn't the best, but hey, the guides take a while, and I'm really glad you watched one to this point. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.